Welcome, trainers, to a journey down memory lane, where we play through each Pokemon generation and talk about our experiences, starting with Generation 1, the Kanto region. My name is Chris. I'm the normal trainer and playing Pokemon Blue. I'm also joined by my two fellow co-hosts.
My name is Sean. I'm the Pokemon Master, and I'm playing Pokemon Red.
And my name is Dustin. I'm the Pokemon Hunter, and I am very excited for the Safari Zone. And we are known as the Trainer Trio.
In the last episode, we took on the Rocket Hideout and defeated Giovanni, made our way over to Lavender Town, and saved Mr. Fuji and got the Pokeflute, battled a Snorlax, and went through Cycling Road. In this episode, we will be going through Route 12, 13, 14, and 15, battling the second Snorlax, finally arriving in Fuchsia City, going through the Safari Zone, picking up the golden teeth for the Warden, and fighting Koga, the gym master in Fuchsia City. I did what I thought was the natural progression, which was go south from Lavender Town into Route 12 to continue my journey to Fuchsia City. Before I even get into going through Route 12 and encountering Snorlax, I thought it was really interesting how we only have 4 badges at this point, and almost the entire game is open to us. Because you needed the Pokeflute to remove the 2 Snorlaxes that were blocking our way from getting to Fuchsia. We already have drinks that get us into Saffron City. The 8th gym leader is back where we started, so the only thing that we really cannot do is surf. So it's kind of interesting that this game is just so non-linear. I mean, we structured this so that we could have a podcast, but technically we didn't even need to go to Fuchsia next. We could have easily just went to Saffron and defeated the gym over there, or we could have done everything out of order. We also didn't need to beat Erica when we beat Erica. So small little discussion there on how this has to be the most non-linear Pokemon game, and it's the very first one. And I can kind of commend the region design for doing that, for allowing you to pick and choose where you're going. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you for pointing that out, Chris, just because that was when I had like this crisis of like, I had no idea how much I should be doing, what I should be doing. So that is exactly why like I sent out the text just to make sure like, hey, we need to have like a set list of what we're doing specifically for this round.
The only other gen that's as open as this is the newest games that just came out, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That's another game where it's open world where you could do whatever you want, but literally, so what? It's Gen 9, right? The newest gen?
Yes.
So that is like 8 gens in between where it's very linear. You have to do X, Y, and Z in the specific order, but just commend the Pokemon Company for their first shot at it, just how open it is. And I love that you have that control. And then even with these gym leaders, obviously we're talking about the Fuchsia gym leader, but Fuchsia and even Sabrina, the next gym leader that we're probably going to do, their levels of Pokemon are very close. So theoretically speaking, you can do whichever one you want. There's no set order in doing them.
Right. And I covered this when we fought the Vermillion gym leader, Surge. I mean, that's optional because the reward you get is to be able to use Fly, which is an optional mechanic. And Celadon City, they allow you to use Strength, which is not required at this point. And then we mentioned Saffron is accessible. That doesn't give you any benefit. You can fight that whenever. The only one that opens up a little bit more is the Fuchsia City Gym, which will allow you, we'll get into it, but it'll allow you to use Surf outside of battle, which blocks you from doing Blaine. But essentially, if you wanted, go ahead and do Fuchsia as your 3rd gym if you want, and then do Blaine as your 4th gym. I mean, it's kind of crazy how you could reorganize this. So just me geeking out.
Before we get into Route 12, this is a question more for Sean, because Chris probably just went straight to Route 12, but after we did Cycling Road and we did go into the city, did you go back to Lavender City and went up to down through like Route 12 through Route 15? Or did you go backwards going through Route 15 up to Lavender City?
So I'll definitely get more in detail on that in a little bit. But basically I had started going from Fuchsia City up, but then I noticed the trainer levels are a little high and I was trying to train Pokemon. So I decided to go from the Lavender Town down route.
And then for me, I did take it backwards, so I went Route 15 up to Lavender Town, so that's just for the viewers to keep of note. When we talk about this, I did in reverse order. So, Chris, you want to start off?
I don't have actually as many notes as you would think. My very first top note is I wrote that Route 12 and 13 and 15, that whole area that leads from Lavender Town to Fuchsia, it's probably my least favorite part of the game just because it's just so battle heavy. You would encounter a couple new Pokemon, but nothing that's really huge. You do get some okay items, but whenever I reach this part of the game, it feels like it slows down so much. This is probably the longest in between two gym leaders if you go the route that we are, and not my favorite part of the game. So what notes do you guys have? Because I honestly don't have that much.
Just talking about the useless portion of this route, I do have a note on Route 13. There is a silent bridge, and I can't really figure out any reason why this was called Silent Bridge. I even looked up online just to see if, like, hey, is there like a reason this is called Silent Bridge? And I couldn't find anything about that. It has a name, but it doesn't have any reasoning currently in this generation.
Generally, so I do have some notes, but I will go more in detail on that later. But some general notes that I took of this route was I noticed someone had a Pokemon that used Payday. I think it was a Meowth that we encountered. And what I noticed is that even when I beat her, I got the extra cash that came from the use of her Pokemon using Payday. I thought that was interesting. I thought you only got the cash bonus if you yourself use Payday. So I noticed that. I remember one thing that I thought was really funny. There's one trainer that you encounter during this route, and he says, "Oh, have you heard about legendary Pokemon?" And then he goes out and throws a Farfetch, one of the worst Pokemon in the game. And so I'm thinking, how do you know about legendary Pokemon and you decide your team is going to consist of one Farfetch? Like, are you kidding me? And then after you beat him, he says the 3 legendary Pokemon are birds of prey. So I guess it kind of relates to him being a bird trainer, and that's why he has a Farfetch. But it's just like, come on, man. You know there are better Pokemon out there, and you still decide to use a Farfetch.
Looking at the Farfetch Pokédex, because I did catch one this episode, they say that they're rarely seen, thought their numbers are decreasing. So, at one point they might become legendary just with how rare they might be.
That's actually very interesting that the Pokédex says that, because I believe Farfetch'd is only available in red and blue with a trade, which Sean and I did previously and mentioned. And then for yellow, at least in this generation, in Route 12, it only has a 5% encounter rate. So it kind of actually is a rare Pokemon in the game setting as well.
Chris or Dustin, did you guys add any Pokemon? I mean, Dustin, you obviously noted you caught the Farfetch, but any other Pokemon that you caught on this route?
I caught a couple Pokemon. I have the ability to catch Bellsprout and Weeping Bell, both in this route. And I caught both of them. I did not add either to my team, but they were captured.
And I guess, is that just Route 13 or is that the whole Route 12 to 15?
We'll do the full area.
Okay, I caught quite a bit of Pokemon then, because in Route 13, this is also where you can claim the Super Rod. Did you guys claim the Super Rod?
I did.
And with that, this was also the first point in time when I realized there's a little quick note for the instructions saying that if you hit select in your items, you can actually move your item up and down. So before I got the Super Rod, when I had the old rod or even just the bicycle, I would open up my menu, scroll all the way down, select it to use it. And then finally I was like, I'm done with this. There's gotta be a better way. And that's when I found out you can actually move items in your list.
I did not know you could do that. I am going to rearrange my entire bag now because that's so helpful.
I was doing that for the bicycle, and I haven't mentioned this yet. Small tangent. I hate using the bicycle because it changes the theme to the bicycle theme, and it frustrates me so much because I love the music in the game.
Going to the Pokemon, so this was my second encounter with the Snorlax, and in this case I did just beat him, and it was quite interesting because if you were to, let's say, just beat Snorlax, in the world, theoretically, he'd just faint and still be blocking the road. So in this case, they actually added a little text saying hey, Snorlax, calm down, and he returned to the mountains. So that's where Snorlax is from.
I took a note of that because I was wondering, because they say from the mountains. I'm like, what mountain ranges are they referring to? Because, obviously the two Snorlaxes are kind of far away from each other. So I would assume that the one in the cycling road, that Snorlax came from the Victory Road mountain. But then the other, Route 12 Snorlax, what mountain range are they probably referring to that? Do you think it's the Dark Tunnel, probably?
I don't know, maybe the Cerulean City mountain, just because it's the most north point in this map. Moving on to some of the Pokemon I captured. Let me just check. I did capture a Weeping Bell also. In that Pokedex, it says, when hungry, it eats anything that moves. That is anything. Pokemon, people, leaves, so you gotta stay out of its way if it's hungry. Another Pokemon I captured was a Gloom, which I know Sean has been a big fan of Gloom, so that was cool to see. And then I finally started using the Super Rod. I did try my best to capture all the water Pokemon, so I got a Horsea, Seadra, Staryu, and even a Shelder. Specifically in Pokemon Yellow, it's in the Cycling route, so that is not from this route.
In this route, when I was going through it, I encountered, which I didn't realize you could encounter this Pokemon at this area, but I encountered a Ditto. I was under the assumption that Ditto was only encounterable in the Pokemon Mansion on the Cinnabar Islands, but I encountered it and I just had to catch it because I don't know how rare of an encounter. I want to say it's like a 10% encounter rate, and so like I saw that and then I caught it with no intention to actually use it. Did you guys ever encounter and or catch a Ditto at this area?
I also caught a Ditto. To your point, Sean, it is a 15% encounter rate, so yes, it is very rare. And fortunately, I did look up some research, and it turns out that most people consider Ditto to be the worst Pokemon in the game due to its gimmicky nature. So I'm sorry, Ditto.
Sadly, I was unable to capture the worst Pokemon in the game, Ditto. I could not encounter one in Pokemon Yellow, I believe.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, not at this point.
Oh, yeah, looking at it now, to Sean's point, it's actually pretty interesting because I know you guys only played Yellow as children. So in Yellow, you can only find it in the Pokemon Mansion or Cerulean Cave, whereas in Red and Blue, you have the ability to catch it in Route 13, 14, 15, or 23.
Moving on, Route 13. I think by the Super Rod, you can also get a TM Swift from a Pokemon trainer. They mentioned that their Pokemon is now in ashes, so they no longer need this TM anymore. This was nearby Lavender City, so I thought that was very, very sad to hear.
Oh, that's awful.
I wonder what turned that Pokemon to ash. I also noticed in one of the battles against a Clefairy, this was the first time I encountered a trainer that used Minimize. Have you guys seen how Minimize looks like?
Yes. It unlocked a core memory because I completely forgot about that until I saw it. I'm like, I remember seeing this in Pokemon Yellow when I was playing as a kid.
I didn't encounter any Pokemon that used Minimize, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm laughing right now.
Yeah, because when the Clefairy in this case used Minimize, it became so tiny that it literally looked like a small little fly. And it's so different from the Minimize that we're used to now. But like, in Generation 1, it was so small and tiny to see on the screen.
I really appreciate the little detail they did there. And let's start a campaign. Bring back the true Minimize.
I'm all for it.
Dustin, you mentioned the Super Rod. What's kind of weird is if you do the game the way that I did, you end up catching the Super Rod, or you end up acquiring the Super Rod before you get the Good Rod. So by the time I got the Good Rod, I was like, why are these so close together and you're allowed to get them like that? And why do we even need a Good Rod? Just give me a Good Rod maybe and a Super Rod. We don't need 3 different rods in this game.
Yeah, I found that fascinating because, of course, in the order that I did this, I did go to Fuchsia City first and like got the Good Rod and then the Super Rod. But in this case, for you, Chris, it's just like you got the better rod before you got the medium-sized one.
Well, then I guess going on that note, so now all the trainer trio have now reached Fuchsia City. Did you guys notice anything, or what was like the first things you kind of did in Fuchsia City?
For one, I wrote that Fuchsia City is absolutely the worst designed city in the game. The gym and Pokemon Center are behind fences. The mart is behind bushes, as is the Safari Zone. Why did we need this? Like, just design the city properly, thank you.
And it just makes it so much more difficult because obviously, like, anytime you want to go to the Safari Zone, you have to open up your menu, find your Pokemon, hit cut. It's so frustrating.
Well, you could get by without having to use cut. It's just a longer distance to get there.
You can get to the Safari Zone without using cut?
Yeah, you have to just walk around, though. It's just makes it much longer.
Why?
Otherwise, this is also one of the first comments I noticed where they mentioned the Pokemon League headquarters, where it's this I guess the Pokemon League governs all Pokemon trainers. So I'm guessing that's where you get your trainer card from the Pokemon League before you even get started. Because, I mean, in lore, that's probably the reason why. Otherwise, in the game, you just already have your trainer card with all your badges and stuff. But I guess you do have to get an official trainer license. Otherwise, I have one more comment, which there's also to the left of Fuchsia City. There's some Birdkeeper trainer type Pokemon, and it was a while since I last used my Pikachu, so this was finally the time that I brought him out and was able to actually train against him. Because I think in this sector leading up to this gym, there's a lot of bird type trainers that I was able to train Pikachu with.
It's funny, you mentioned bird trainers. So in the game, in the cycling route, I believe it's called Route 17, there's a lot of people who talk about their bird Pokemon and say bird type. It's a theory that the type was actually called, instead of flying type, it was called bird type in the early parts of the game. And they ended up changing it very late into development so it could encompass more flying type Pokemon that were not necessarily birds. And if you catch one of the glitch Pokemon, it actually does have that bird typing in there. So it exists in the code of the game. And I thought it was kind of interesting. And I think that the dialogue with those trainers was written before they changed it from bird to flying type. I know one of the first things I did in Fuchsia City was I decided to go visit the warden, who said, "Ahwa hui hu hua hui ho."
Great nose, Chris.
It was very important.
What did you say to him? It's a question. You can say either yes or no.
I don't remember how I even responded. I was scared. There's a big boulder in his room, though. That's kind of strange. I don't know why that's there.
It's called interior decorating, Chris. Learn about it.
Sorry.
There's another house, and this is where you could talk to the fishing guru's younger brother. And that's where you get the good rod. Did you guys use the good rod to capture some Pokemon?
I mean, I have the Squirtle starter, so I have no desire to add any water types. So I have not tried to catch a single water type. Haven't used any of the good rods, old rods, super rods. None of that. I have Squirtle, and that's all I need.
I caught a Krabby. I used it a couple times, but I don't know. A lot of the Pokemon you can catch with these rods are not that good, unless you're potentially in the Safari Zone.
In Pokemon Yellow, I was only able to capture Poliwag and a Goldeen. I can't really find any other Pokemon using the Gold Rod. I went to a couple other places. Otherwise, this is also, if you go to the Pokemart, I believe this is the first city that we've been to where you can buy Ultra Balls.
I didn't even notice that.
Yes, I forgot about that as well, but I did purchase some Ultra Balls.
For Sean's case, because he did not buy an Ultra Ball. Like, all the Pokeballs you use in this game, they don't really look too different when you use them. But the animations, they do try and change it up. So when you throw an Ultra Ball, it actually rotates a lot faster than using the normal Pokeball.
I'm going to check that for red and blue, because I haven't noticed that, but that may be very true.
I know, I definitely caught a lot of Pokemon this episode, so I was paying lots of close attention to those Pokeballs.
I don't think there's a whole lot of other things you can do in Fuchsia City. I know that Bill's grandfather lives there, and I spoke to him briefly, but it doesn't look like he adds much to the game or to the lore.
All right, well, let's get to the exciting part of Fuchsia City then, the Safari Zone. So, I will open it up to you guys. How was your first time in the Safari Zone?
Well, hold up just a minute. Right before the Safari Zone, there's a Pokemon Zoo outside. Did you guys get to see all the Pokemon in the Pokemon Zoo?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I decided to take a look. I thought that was actually just part of the Safari Zone, but you're right. It has a fun little name called the Pokemon Zoo.
And this is like a cool little area where you can actually see a lot of the Pokédex entries for all the Pokemon before you even try and capture them. One of them being Lapras, which is the king of the sea. Also, one last thing before we actually went to the Safari Zone, I noticed that there was like a boyfriend and girlfriend searching for each other. The boyfriend was outside the Pokemon Zoo looking for his girlfriend. And then you later find out inside the Safari Zone is the girlfriend, and she's just in there asking, like, where's her boyfriend? She's waiting for him. So that relationship's not going to last.
I didn't catch that, but I love the little things they do like that in this game. It's cute.
Once when you finally get to the front doors of the Safari Zone, there's a very good tip where they mention that, hey, you should change Pokemon boxes before you go inside. And like, as soon as I read that, I had to do it because I didn't want to repeat releasing Pokemon into the wild.
Ah, you remembered. This is really minor, but one little nitpick I had about the Safari Zone was that it uses the evolution background music in the whole zone, which I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity for an original song, or maybe the theme from Viridian Forest. I thought that could have been fitting, but instead it sounds like a Pokemon's evolving the entire time, which can get a little annoying. I really went into this trying to catch some Pokemon because there's some actually great Pokemon in the Kanto Safari Zone, and I almost forgot that we put a rule at the very beginning that we can really only add one Pokemon from the Safari Zone to our team. So I kept that in mind as well, but I was going in it, guns blazing, trying to figure out what to do, and I kind of struggled. I forgot how difficult it is to catch Pokemon in Safari Zone, and doing a little research, I found out that the way that the catching mechanics work in Gen 1 is that if the Pokemon's at full health, you are at a disadvantage just based on how the calculations work. So the Safari Zone is a little bugged in Generation 1 to make it a little harder to catch Pokemon, because essentially what you're doing is throwing an Ultra Ball at a Pokemon that has full health. That's all you're doing, and you can throw a rock to make it a little easier, but it's going to flee, or you can throw bait, which makes it harder to catch, but it won't flee. So I was quite struggling with this, especially also finding all the items, and it definitely took me more than one time to go through it all. I'm going to let someone else talk before I talk for 20 minutes about the Safari Zone.
I do want to ask one question for you, because you did mention all the different ways you could capture Pokemon. What was your strategy? Did you throw the rock, the bait, or just the Pokeballs?
That's so funny you talk about that, because I was doing so much research on this to figure out what is the best strategy. And there's this one website that I will have to give a shout out to. It is called dragonflycave.com, and in its mechanics section, it has a calculator that actually tells you what's the best approach to catching a Pokemon. You get to put in the level, the Pokemon, and it'll tell you which strategy is your best bet. And for almost all of them, it said, just chuck balls at it. Like, just do that. Like, you may make it easier to catch it if you throw a rock, but it's going to flee. So that was my strategy, because unless the Pokemon is very slow, it is probably going to run pretty often. So just give yourself a chance to catch it by throwing a Safari Ball.
On the completely opposite side of the spectrum, I did no research. I went to the Safari Zone and I'm just like, I don't care about anything. I'm just throwing balls. So that was my strategy the entire time.
You just went immediately to the best strategy. That's really good. I know when I started, I was like throwing some rocks, throwing some bait, being like, all right, this is probably working. Is it working? And then I encountered the Pokemon that really threw me for the loop. Chansey.
You found a Chansey?
I did. You could find Chansey in Pokemon Yellow. The only problem is that it doesn't matter what you do. Every Pokeball you throw at it, it just misses. And this is the time when I was like, all right, maybe I'll throw some bait, and then it just runs away. I'll throw rocks, it'll run away. So I looked online, and this is where I did like some research just on some forums, and like everyone just says, just throw Pokeballs at it. And I kept trying that, and still couldn't capture Chansey. So this was like the time, like, I'm the Pokemon hunter. What do I do in this case? Do I let this one Pokemon I've seen just like go into the wild, or do I hunker down and just keep playing until I can capture a Chansey? And we will get back to that later.
During my time in the Safari Zone, I encountered 3 Chanseys, and each time I don't even think a single Pokeball hit it. Like, cause my strategy was just throw Pokeballs. I did no research. It missed every time and it would run away. And each time I saw it, I was just like, oh, it'd be cool if I caught it, but I had no expectations to actually catch it. But I will just start going into some of the Pokemon I did catch in the Safari Zone during my first run. So I went to the Safari Zone 3 times. And so the first time, I kind of just wanted to pick up all the items because I knew there's a lot of items in there. And so that first run, I found an Execute I caught, even though its sprite's super weird. I just want to catch it anyways. Then I saw a Rhyhorn again. It's a weird sprite, but I just decided to catch it because I was kind of thinking I might add Rhyhorn to my team later. So that was during my first run. I caught those 2 Pokemon. I got almost all the items, and then my time ran out. The second run, I was going to the end to get the HM for Surf. And so that time, I think that was a time where I think I encountered 2 of the Chanseys. And so I didn't catch any other Pokemon though. And so I went all the way, got the surf route. And then going into the 3rd run, as I mentioned to you guys in earlier, or what may be the earlier episode, during the game corner, I wanted a Scyther. And I knew it was really expensive at the game corner. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to hunker down in the Safari Zone and catch myself a Scyther. And so this is the only research I did to see where the Scyther spawns in the Safari Zone. But fate is a funny thing. So I am going to the zone to catch the Scyther, and I just randomly have an encounter with a Kangaskhan. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I've never even encountered this. Like, I'm just going to throw some Pokeballs, totally not expecting to catch it. The first Pokeball I throw, I catch. So I got a Kangaskhan, and I looked in, I don't know if it was the same site that Chris did, but I just wanted to see like the odds of actually catching a Kangaskhan. And so it broke down like Kangaskhan with the ball only method is a 14% chance to catch. And I got it on my first Pokeball. So I thought that was super lucky. So after I caught that, I still went in and I didn't encounter any ciphers. And so I just decided, you know what? I am happy with a Kangaskhan. I am adding her to my party. I named her Madam in reference to Madam Wed.
Very topical.
Congratulations on that, Sean, because the encounter rate for a Kangaskhan only goes up to 4%. Some areas it's only 1%, so that's pretty crazy. And as you mentioned, it's really hard to catch them. You guys mentioned that you guys encountered Chanseys and you didn't even connect one Pokeball. I've mentioned it before. That's just the Gen 1 equivalent of it's not even shaking once, so nothing there. I encountered one Chansey because I was hunting for it. I really wanted to find one. It took me forever to find one in the area where it's a 4% encounter rate. Same thing happened as you guys. I threw one ball. It missed. It ran. So I gave up. Also on that note, not to get too ahead of myself, but in Gen 1, you can catch a Chansey later in the game. So I wasn't too upset about that. Going over some other rare encounters, I also found one Kangaskhan. Unlike Sean, I was unable to catch it. That is also only a 4% encounter rate at one point. My other hard encounter to Sean, counter to his Scyther, is Pinsir, which I did not find once. And I was really looking for a Tauros because Tauros is a beast Gen 1 Pokemon. I mean, it's one of the top tier Gen 1 Pokemon, but in Red and Blue, it also only has about a 4% encounter rate. So I found one, no chance of catching it, and I just got too tired and frustrated. So I didn't catch it, but just finishing up on that note, Tauros in Pokemon Yellow, there's a 10% encounter rate. They make it so much more easier to catch. And people believe the reason for that is because there's an episode where Ash catches 30 of them. So they wanted to kind of make it more common to kind of reference that. But it's also kind of funny because the episode where he caught 30 of them is an episode that was banned in the United States because the warden points a pistol at Ash's face. So a lot of Americans probably would have never thought about that.
Oh man, I can't believe it, Chris. That's the one Pokemon you were hyping up the most in our episode 0.
I know, I wanted it so bad, and maybe I'll try again later, but I spent a lot of time in the Safari Zone, and I was like, I need to move on.
This was my breaking point, talking about the Chansey. Like, do I just hunker down? I would like to mention, I started this after the last gym. It's taken me 12 hours so far just to beat the first, that's 4 gyms that we've done so far. So now, leading up to this one point, I did finally capture a Chansey. It took me a long time.
Wow. That's just round of applause for Dustin. That's impressive.
It is. It really is.
It took a lot of willpower. At this point in the game, since the last gym to the point that I caught the Chansey, it took me 7 hours. That also includes the other routes we did, the Pokemon Tower and everything, but you can at least say it probably took like 3 or 4 hours strictly in the Safari Zone. Because I did not just capture the Chansey. There's another Pokemon that's also very difficult to capture. In this case, it was the Tangela. So, Chansey, when you capture it, or try and throw Pokeballs at it, keep missing. Keep saying it miss, very frustrating. For Tangela, it's even more frustrating because when you throw a Pokeball, it'd shake once and then just escape every single time. So that was very difficult. I did write down the Pokédex for Tangela, which it said its body is covered in thick blue vines. So you have to really wonder what its actual body looks like because it's just this black void within these blue vines. I did also capture a couple other Pokemon. Should I list them out?
I would say go for it, yeah.
Alright, so caught Rhyhorn, and its Pokédex is once it starts charging, it won't stop until it falls asleep. So I'm just wondering how long a Rhyhorn can stay awake. I did capture the Tauros. It was easier for Pokemon Yellow. And I thought this was funny too, because it said once it starts running, it won't stop until it hits something. So now you have a Rhyhorn that keeps charging until it falls asleep, and then a Tauros that keeps running until it hits something. So if it follows a Rhyhorn, I wonder how long that encounter would take. This was also my point where I captured the Execute, and for this Pokédex, there must be 6 heads to maintain a balance. So I was just thinking that's kind of interesting, because I guess in the Pokemon world, then you probably see Executes with just 1 head and not the full 6. I guess same thing with Dugtrio, how like if you have 3 like Diglets together, it creates the evolved form. So it's just interesting how that works in the Pokemon world. I did capture the Pinsir also that I wrote down. In this case, Pinsir cannot move while it is cold, so it lives in warmer places. So that Pokemon is probably not too great to take on your Pokemon journey, at least in later generations. I know in Generation 4 you go to the snowy mountains. That'd be very difficult to keep a Pinsir moving up there. And then I did capture a few others. I captured Kangaskhan also, as Sean mentioned. And then the one Pokemon that I did add to my party from the Safari Zone is the Scyther.
I'm jealous, but good for you.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Safari Zone.
I can't wait to hear what your final playtime was after beating Koga.
Not just that, the Pokédex too, Chris.
I will say, I caught a lot of Pokemon in the Safari Zone too. I'm not going to go over most of them, but I did catch one that I added to my team. It is Sean's least favorite, Execute.
Ew.
I caught it obviously pretty late into this journey or into this area, so it didn't get leveled up as quickly as the other Pokemon are at, but caught it. I named it Greg, like G-R, Egg, E-G-G. Welcome to the team, Greg.
At this point, so I kept on saying I wanted to go back to the water route, Route 12, and up to 15. And so after I caught my Kangaskhan, that's when I went and did that route and just to try and give it levels. So Kangaskhan, I think I gave it the HM for strength because we got access to that following when we gave the Warden his teeth. One of the other moves that Kangaskhan has is Rage. And so Chris may have mentioned it earlier in this podcast about how terrible of a move Rage is, but I didn't realize. I just ignored Chris because I usually do. So I went into my first battle of Kangaskhan, and I think one of the Pokemon was almost fainted. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to use Rage to save the PPs for the other moves and move on. I didn't realize it locks you into using Rage consecutively. I don't know how long it lasts because I did that until my Kangaskhan fainted because it's just such a terrible move. And I don't know, I hated it. Like, Rage sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah, it can be very good or very bad, I guess, because it raises your attack if you get hit. So it could be kind of okay if Kangaskhan is getting attack buffs, but then also if you're not getting hit and someone's setting up against you, then you're just using a very weak move and you're locked into it. It's awful.
The only other thing on the route is that I also gave my Kangaskhan Seismic Toss. And so I haven't used that or seen it at all in this run yet. And so when I used it, it unlocked another core memory of mine seeing that, which I will tell, this is just a precursor, but I will tell the full Seismic Toss story at a later time because I think it'll be more relevant then. But it's just because I think I used Seismic Toss, and then I think the next battle is when I had the Minimized Trainer. And so it just unlocked 2 like core memories of me playing Pokemon Yellow that I completely forgot I had.
For me, I did after Safari Zone. This is also when I took on that full route. And it was also at this point where when you go in between the building, between the route and Fuchsia City, you can talk to Professor Oak's assistant and actually get another item. Did you guys talk to the assistant and get the item?
I did. I talked to the assistant, and if I'm remembering correct, Dustin, is this the XP all for having 50 Pokemon caught?
It is.
I did not have 50 Pokemon at this point, so I did not get it, but I know all about it.
How about you, Sean?
It probably goes without saying that everyone knows I do not have enough Pokemon to get it. But I saw that and I was thinking, dang, Dustin's probably going to get this and he's going to be able to level up his Pokemon pretty easy when he gets it.
I didn't want to have the same failures last time. I was just stuck at 29 Pokemon trying to reach that 30th. So in this case, I did get the 50 Pokemon and got the EXP share. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. Let me start using it. And I realized how terrible it is, because if you have it just in your backpack and you like, let's say battle a Pokemon and it would normally give you like 400 EXP, what it does is it'll give the Pokemon that beat it half of that EXP and then split the other half across all the other Pokemon. So Pokemon would be getting like 50 EXP, and it was not worth it.
No, yeah, it's not good. And, you said the word XP share, but yeah, in Gen 1, it's called the XP all because of what you mentioned. They give the experience to all the members in your party. And then it wasn't until Gen 2 and Gen 3 that it became the XP share. It became a held item that you give to a Pokemon so that it only goes to the Pokemon who battled plus the Pokemon that is holding the XP share. Obviously, until we get to later generations when they started actually mimicking this Gen 1 format where every Pokemon in your party got experience.
So I immediately just went back to my box and put it in there for safekeeping. And then I was looking through all the Pokemon I captured now and realizing I could get quite a few more new Pokemon if I just use all the evolution stones. So in this case, I did evolve quite a few Pokemon. I evolved my Shelter to Cloyster, Staryu to Starmie, Gloom to Vileplume, Weepinbell to Victory Bell, Execute to Executor, and then my Nidorino and Nidorina to the Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Maybe I'm using a couple of those Pokemon, but most of them is mainly just to fill out my Pokédex. That's my goal.
I thought about doing that, but I got lazy. I'll be doing that in the future.
I don't have enough Pokemon to do that with, so I will not be doing that in the future.
Getting to the gym, so obviously you have to go through the Safari Zone. There's some signs that actually tell you that there's a secret house that has a surf in there, and then also there's some signs that tell you to go pick up the gold teeth for the warden. I'm sure you guys got surf. I'm sure you guys gave the gold teeth to the warden and got strength. Technically, none of that is required to face Koga, but just wanted to cover that before. I'll let you guys talk about your experiences going into the Poison Gym.
And this gym, it is another maze. In this case, it is invisible walls. So you see Koga in plain distance, but you can't quite reach him. So in this case, you have to battle all of his other trainers while you make your way to Koga. And I noticed there's another new trainer type, the Juggler. One of them, he's holding like 4 Pokeballs as he's juggling them in his sprite, but then he actually only has a 1 Pokemon. And I found out that 1 Pokemon was a level 38 Hypno, which at the time, my Pokemon were not at level 38. They were around like level 32 to 34. I was like, this is not good. If this is literally the first trainer that I'm going up against. So this made me realize like I need to start training my Pokemon. So at this point in the game, after I beat the level 38 Hypno, I actually started using the Super Rod to train some of my Pokemon at the route right below the city. Afterwards, got all my Pokemon a little bit more beefier before I came back. This was also the first case where I faced against another trainer and they actually switched their Pokemon out mid-battle. I don't know if that's a thing that you actually see in the newer gens, but that just really caught me off by surprise.
That also happened to me where they swapped it out. I know it's possible. I don't know the later generations as much, but I know in Gen 3, 4, 5, I've seen it happen, but it is quite rare.
Moving on, there are quite a few Drowsies and Kadabras in this gym, and I'm thinking, how is this the poison gym? I still haven't fought against a poison Pokemon. Maybe they have one move that uses poison. And I'm thinking also, the gym leader, he's a ninja. So why is poison and, psychic? Why are these things his main, Pokemon that they're using? I will find out later, but we'll get to that. There's another new trainer type, the Tamer, who I also noticed had a whip. So this is now, the 3rd trainer we've seen use a whip. Another comment I had while we're walking through this gym is that if you talk to one of the trainers after you beat them, he does mention that if you look closely at the floor, you can look closely for gaps and realize you can actually see the invisible walls. They aren't actually invisible. They're just little tiles that you can move through. Did you guys notice that?
I did not. Just from my prior playthroughs of Pokemon Fire Red, I kind of had this layout memorized, so I knew exactly how to get in, but I just wanted to say, Dustin, a lot of the things that you noted were things that I also noted. Seeing that first level 38 Hypno, I was I think my Pokemon were just level 32 at this time. I'm dang, I am not prepared for this gym. So I had to go out, do a grinding session as well. I think I mentioned I did that in the cycling route. And honestly, I mean, we'll see when we go to our playtimes, but that was probably like half of my playtime was just grinding to level up my Pokemon because, you know, as I mentioned, during the bike route, I had a Haunter, fully expecting to use Haunter in this gym, but then I got the Kangaskhan. So I kind of wasted all that XP leveling up my Haunter just to not use him and having to retrain Kangaskhan all the way up. Yeah, so I trained them up, and then I had the same thought as you, because we've encountered so many Hypnos and Drowsies and stuff. I'm like, isn't this the Poison-type gym? Why are these Psychic-type gyms? And I was even under the assumption that maybe they changed, like, maybe he's a Psychic-type gym for this generation. They changed it later, but then I finally did see Poison-type Pokemon, and I was like, oh, okay, where have you been this entire time? But then, Chris, if you have your gym experiences before Koga, if you want to share anything.
Pretty much the same stuff. Well, I actually noticed something. I wanted to research this. On Bulbapedia, it says, if playing Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow on a normal Game Boy, the walls are invisible. However, when using a multicolored palette on the Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance, these walls are exposed. I was playing on the Game Boy Advance player on the GameCube, so that's essentially a Game Boy Advance. Sean, I know you're playing on a Game Boy Advance, and Dustin's on an emulator. I noticed on mine, the walls were kind of visible and it was kind of easy to get through, which I remember in Gen 3, it looked actually very invisible. And I just wanted to ask Dustin, like, were the walls actually, like, could you not tell where they really were?
I mean, when I first was playing it, I didn't really pay attention to it. So I would say it's still visible, but you have to actually pay attention to look at least on my emulator.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I was like, oh, this is easy. And then I did a little research and thought, oh, maybe just because I was playing on kind of a Game Boy Advance, it was a little easier. And what you guys mentioned as well, that it was mostly a Psychic gym. And part of me makes me think that Sabrina and Koga may have been swapped at some point or something. I feel like something happened late in development here as well. And that has to be the reason why this gym wasn't set up properly. But I don't have anything to back that up. Lastly, I did a lot of grinding. I wanted all of my Pokemon to be level 40 before taking on this gym. So I got almost all of them up to 40. Some are 39. Greg is only 34 because I got tired. And then I didn't well, we haven't even talked about this yet. Our starter probably is fully evolved at this point. My Charmeleon, I was actually holding off for a while. Once it got to level 36, I purposely was delaying its evolution because I was getting very frustrated that it only knew Ember. So it learns Flamethrower at level 42 versus Charizard, who learns it at 46. So I said, I am not waiting until level 46 to get rid of Ember. So I delayed the evolution, got it to level 40, used a couple rare candies, got it to 42. It learned Flamethrower. I evolved it to Charizard. And finally, my Char is useful.
Chris, your Pokemon gonna definitely outlevel mine because after I encountered that Hypno, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get all my Pokemon to level 36 because I want my fully evolved starter. Then I was just gonna go back to the gym. And so I did. I got them all to level 36. I evolved my Wartortle to a Blastoise. He looks like his sprite. The first thought I had was he looks like Kingpin from the animated Spider-Verse, the first one, you know, the very big, like bulky. That's just what he looks like. He looks like he should be running a mafia or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at that Gen 1 sprite and he's kind of got his hands on his hips with his chest puffed out versus Dustin's sprite where he's doing like an action pose and his cannons are pointing at you.
It's funny how we all grinded in our own ways. I think I definitely had to like make the decision, like, where do I want to grind this episode? Leveling up Pokemon or capturing them? And definitely spent most of the time capturing the Pokemon, but I did try and make a point at least to have all my Pokemon at least level 37 or higher. If I were to be playing this on my own, I probably wouldn't be doing that, but I just don't want to be humiliated anymore in the round robin showdowns after our episodes. I really want to like beat Sean, so hopefully this is the episode that me and Chris can take back the reins.
Well, I will say it looks like everyone has higher level Pokemon than me, so maybe, just maybe, someone will beat me. I still don't think it's gonna happen, but we'll see.
Going into Koga, this is finally where it made some kind of sense why there's a lot of Psychic and Poison Pokemon. It's because he mentioned that like his gym focuses on poison and sleep techniques. So a lot of the psychic Pokemon, they're able to use hypnosis, which puts Pokemon to sleep. So that made a lot of sense. And then this was also where I got another real fright of like, can I beat this gym? Because he had 4 Pokemon, and the first Pokemon he sent out was level 44. So that was already 4 levels ahead of mine. At least for Pokemon Yellow, he had 3 Venonats, level 44, 46, 48, and then his final Pokemon, which was very difficult to take on, a Venomoth at level 50. So I was up against like Pokemon that was 10 levels higher than mine, and as soon as he sent out his Venomoth, he used an X attack. And like at this point, I was doing pretty well. I didn't lose any Pokemon to the first 3 Venonats, but with that Venomoth, he took out 4 of my Pokemon. And that was before I could deal damage against him. He was like using Leech Life, which was OP, but this is where my Scyther came in to really seal the deal. Scyther ended up being the Venomoth. So I still had like 1 more Pokemon left over, I think, after Scyther, but it was quite intense for me towards the end there. How about you guys?
Just mentioning your battle, Dustin, I noticed that. I've been doing my research during the playthrough, and I looked up Koga after I was done, and I looked at his Pokemon and said, oh my gosh, why is Koga so strong in Pokemon Yellow? And I think you're actually getting to the point now where Yellow is more of like a hard mode. Like if you played through Red and Blue, now you're playing Yellow, they made it just a little bit more challenging for you. And also, I want to say that there's only Venonats and Venomoths because of the anime yet again. That's the 2 Pokemon that he uses in the anime. In Pokemon Red and Blue, we had 2 Coughings level 37 for some reason, and there is absolutely no difference between them, moveset or anything. We have Muck level 39 and a Weezing level 43. So his strongest Pokemon is weaker than his weakest Pokemon in your game, Dustin.
It was very difficult. And this was the point where it's like also question like, are we supposed to be taking on this gym? Should I just be in Saffron City? Can you imagine if his highest level Pokemon is 10 levels higher than mine? I was just thinking like, is Saffron City gym like level 60 Pokemon at this point?
They really made it difficult on you because, unfortunately, my gym experience was super easy. I had Sandy, who knows Dig, so I dug through all of these guys. It's super effective, and the only thing I had to note, which I thought was really funny, was I was using that strategy against the level 43 Weezing. So I used Dig, I went underground, and he used Self-Destruct with his last Pokemon. And I was underground, so it didn't hit me. So, like, I was like, what? So the way I won the badge was by being underground when his Weezing self-destructed. And I was like, what strategy is that? Just giving up and killing yourself, saying, we're done here.
I'm so funny that happened to you because that also happened to me where he had his last Weezing and he used self-destruct. I'm just like, why? Just, you don't want to compete at all? You just give up? But I'll go into my battle, I guess. So I started off with my Dragonair up against his Coffee, and I just kind of wanted to do what I've been doing, the agility to wrap, just to try and sweep his team. But I unfortunately did get poisoned. My Dragonair got poisoned. So I was able to take down his first Coffee doing the wrap, but then Muck, he got a little too low in the HP because of poison. So that I went with my Nidoqueen, since she's a poison type, and just body slammed the Muck and the next Coughing to death until he sent out the Weezing. And I guess he just really didn't like my Nidoqueen because he just exploded right there to take out my Nidoqueen. And I was like, damn, beat my Nidoqueen, but at what cost?
Well, after you do beat Koga, he does give you the TM Toxic. And he mentions that this is a secret technique that's over 400 years old. So that's some cool Pokemon lore. Otherwise, are we ready to go into statistics?
I think so.
Alright, so before we go in, I just want to remind everyone at least where we're currently at. So now moving into some stats. So in our last episode, I ended with a time of 12:05 and 35 Pokemon. Sean ended with a time of 12:10 and 18 Pokemon. And Chris, he was the fastest one there. He finished with a 9:58 and had 24 Pokemon. So those are just some of the stats we currently had. So moving in, I can start with this. So definitely had big updates to both of those stats, and then I'll go through my Pokemon. So I had an ending time of 24:41. So I've spent about 12 hours on this run. mainly through the Safari Zone, and then just try and grind to like beat Koga. And my Pokédex, I went all the way up to 74 Pokemon. So I caught quite a few new Pokemon. And through my party, I'll run it through weakest to highest. So at level 37, I had Pikachu, Victory Bell, and Scyther. At level 38, I had Hypno. And then at level 40, this was the Pokemon I mentioned that I ended up trading for, was a Machamp. And I also had a level 40 Cloyster.
Really double your playtime there, buddy.
The playtime and like tripled my Pokédex. Chris, you can go for it.
Sure. Yeah, last time my time was 9:58, and I played for exactly 7 hours. My playtime now is 16:58, which probably is still going to be the quickest out of you guys. Pokédex last time was 24. I'm at 45 now, so I added an extra 21 Pokemon there. And then running through my team now, it's a little bigger than it was. I have Greg the Execute at level 34, Sandy the Sandslash at level 39, Ive the Jolteon at level 39, Char the Charizard at level 42, and Purdy the Persian at level 40.
I still hate you for that name, but anyways, now going on to me. So as Dustin said, the last time I had was 1210. I am now at 2024. So quite a big jump, but it mainly went to leveling my Pokemon. Also, last I had 18 Pokemon. I now have 29, which is probably the biggest jump we're going to see me make throughout this entire game, because I don't see myself catching many more Pokemon past this.
Just to reiterate, at least on that, so I'm hearing that Sean got 10 Pokemon, Chris got about 20 Pokemon, and I captured around like 45 Pokemon.
That is insane. See, so just, when we're talking about the item finder, I still can't get the item finder. I still don't have 30 Pokemon, so that is just not going to be in the cards for me, I don't think. Anyways, going to my party, as everyone kind of knows already, I have the lowest level party. So starting off, I have my Dragonair named Shenron, who's level 36. Queenie, the Nidoqueen, level 36. Madam, the Kangaskhan, named after the cinematic masterpiece that is Madam Web, at number 36. My Flareon, named Vulpix, level 36. Blue, the Blastoise, at level 37. And Marcel, the Mr. Mime, at also level 37.
One reason I switched to Hypno from Mr. Mime is because I do not like mirror matchups, and I didn't want to keep using the same Pokemon there.
I mean, if you waited long enough, I don't see Mr. Mime's not probably gonna stay on my team too long anymore, but who knows, he might.
Looking at my previous team to this team, the only Pokemon I kept was my Pikachu. Everyone else is a new Pokemon on my team.
Oh yeah, there's no more Gyarados.
Oh, great.
We'll find out what Chris's next weakness is.
Alright, well, now that we have all successfully beat Koga, it's time for us to sign off. At the end of this episode, we are all going to go another round robin format to see who has the best teams. So again, if we have any bettors listening to us, now would be the time to take a bet to see if I will remain undefeated. In our next episode, we will be talking about our experiences leading up to the 6th gym leader, the psychic who bent a spoon, Sabrina. Also, on the route, I think we might stop by and examine what's in that abandoned power plant. I wonder what we'll find there. Until next time, we are the Trainer Trio, signing off. Catch you in Saffron City, trainers.